members. We have done that. A couple of years ago, we paid $1 million because we felt we had not put enough in. So we have done that in the past, Scott, where we have wanted to do that. Before I accept that motion, I'll listen to Ms. Burdick.
A friendly amendment, Mr. Chair.
Yes?
Because Mr. Kong has clarified that his letter does not specifically state the recommendation only applies to 2009, in the port's cover letter, I would like to include that.
Okay. So the motion is that we send over your product, that it be specified as to this is an anomaly in 2009, and that we believe the green line, whatever number that appropriately is where we should go. Scenario 4. Is everybody clear? It's Rocky.
I just want to, the more I think about this, the more I'm struck with the blue line, and it really bothers me to hear us say we're only going to take this big action 1 year. That's how we got things that get in trouble in that manner. And it's painting now or painting later. I don't understand why we are trying to make it easy on ourselves this year, so we can. It just seems to me to be an action we need not take and a risk we need not take.
I have no other lights. I'll state that I'm comfortable with green. I'm more comfortable with blue, but I will certainly go with the will of the majority. We have a motion, and the motion.
But I'm the amendment to the motion. I don't want to approve the amendment.
Oh, so we're now back to the original motion. That makes it easy.
That makes it easier.
No, wait a minute. He is the seconder of the original motion, and he doesn't agree to change the motion. You can't just have somebody else second it.
No, that's true. Well, it goes back to the maker of the motion. What does the maker of the motion withdraw the first motion?
No.
Like to put a substitute motion?
He
seconded the original motion.
He seconded the original motion, and he doesn't wish to go along with the change in the motion.
Well, then,
I don't want to give the second because I'm in support of blue.
So we have to vote on the original motion.
the original motion. Sure. You can withdraw the motion.
You can withdraw the motion, and we can ask for a new motion.
Right.
Is the motion withdrawn, Mr. Peters? Acceptable to you, Dukes? Now we'll have a motion. Okay?
I would like to move that the port forward to SD Serves a copy of Mr. Kong's letter with a cover letter saying that the port supports Mr. Kong's recommendation with respect to scenario 4, that includes a 30-year amortization and no negative amortization, and that we clarify the recommendation covers the market anomalies in 2009, and the methodology will be reconsidered in future years.
And there's a second to that motion. That's the green line. Is everybody ready to vote? Let's vote on the lights, please. Motion fails. We are open for a new motion, please. Please, she needs to read it out, Laura.
Motion fails with Commissioners Spain, Bixler, Cushman, and Valderrama voting no, Commissioners Peters, Hall, and Burdick voting yes.
We're open for a new motion. Commissioner Valderrama?
Can we get the chart back up? My motion is that we go with the blue chart, whatever motion or form that takes, that's where I'm headed with the motion.
And with the comments that were made by Ms. Burdick in the last motion as to this is 1 year, no negative amortization, all of the above. Including his letter, yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry, can I interject for a minute?
Marty. It's you. One time.
But there's no blue line that's on the table for the service board consideration. I think what is on the table is that you don't change to 30-year, you keep a 15-year. So that's the closest thing you can do. Line.
There is no changes to the actual plan of action that we have.
Yeah, go to 15 years. I'm saying that don't consider 4 or whatever, just keep the current. I think that would be, yeah. Don't make a change.
Don't make a change.
Right. The motion is that we take no action on your letter and we leave everything as is.
Yes.
And that accomplishes.
Does that accomplish the quote blue line?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Peters, then Mr. Bixler. No? Mr. Bixler?
But I think what four of us want is a message sent over there that we want, for 1 year, we want the blue line calculation, period. We don't want to change from what we're doing.
But Mike,
right
what he's saying
now.
is the blue line is 30 years and we're presently on 15.
Then we want 15 years, no change from what we're doing
Then that's
now.
what we need to tell them.
That's what the motion is.
That's what I think Dookie was trying to say, I'm
Yeah.
trying to say, he's trying
So
to say.
Con, you're out of order. We're going to do what we're going to do. Okay, I have a motion which was made by Dookie, seconded by Mr. Bixler. Everybody clear? Let's vote on the lights, please.
Commissioner Burdick, I need your vote, please.
Who put the lights out?
I still need Commissioner Burdick's vote. Thank you. Motion passes with Commissioner Peters voting no.
Okay, that was easy. Yeah, let's just move on from here to item 32. This was so easy.
So what I'm clear, because I'll be the one that does this, we're going to be sending a letter back over to SD Serves, and basically we're going to say that the board preference is to leave the calculation of the board's annual contribution status quo. Leave it just as it is.
Absolutely correct.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not opposed to that. Can we reflect that as a unanimous vote, please?
We certainly can reflect it as a unanimous vote, right?
You didn't want to vote no?
He goofed, he pushed the wrong button. Let's push yes.
Yes, I will record that. Thank you.
Yes?
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, I understand what the cover letter is going to say. What I don't understand is Mr. Kong's recommendation to us to be forwarded to SD Serves. Yes, okay, thank you.
Okay, everybody clear? Jeff, that was so easy. We'll just roll right into 32 now. All right, we're going to talk about update on the port's operating reserves. That is item 32 in your notebooks.
Okay,
Rock and roll.
good to go. Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Jeff McEntee, the CFO Treasurer for the Port of San Diego. At the July 7th board meeting, the board adopted Board of Port Commissioners Policy 117 that formalized the establishment of a 6-month operating reserve. That policy also includes guidelines for use of the operating reserve. At the July 7th board meeting, staff advised the board that cash flow projections showed that the port's operating reserve would be drawn down by about $28 million in fiscal year 12-13. And based on the projected draw in the operating reserve, what the board asked staff to do was to come back in September with a plan of how we would replenish the operating reserve. So my brief presentation at this late hour is I'll just cover 3 aspects. Just a quick review of the Board Policy 117, some of the high-level provisions, the cash flow forecast, drawn reserve, and then the plan for replenishment. Briefly, Board Policy 117 again established, it really formalized what we already had in existence since 1994, the Board Policy. It's established annually, be approved by the Board, and within that reserve amount is $20 million that's designated specifically for catastrophic events. The provisions for use above $20 million, and there's one other item, I apologize it's not on there, and that is that it's to be used for any type of regulatory or legal mandates, cash flow requirements to run the business, major maintenance, capital projects that have been approved, and then emergent opportunities with the provision that any emergent opportunities need to have a 5-year payback. This is the cash flow forecast, and it's in a different format than what you saw before. Previously, what we showed you was the cumulative drawn reserves out in year 2012-13. Now, what this is showing you is the progression that gets us out to that number in 2012-13. And it's based on an April cash flow forecast, and at that time we were a little more pessimistic in terms of, or more conservative in terms of what we thought the withdrawal on last year, or what the draw on reserves would be based on last year's results. And so we've tweaked this just a little bit. We haven't updated it, and that's what we're in the process of doing. I'll come back to that in the next slide. But in any event, it looks like last year's results are going to be significantly better than what we had originally anticipated. And that's due to a variety of reasons, but it includes things like having a hiring freeze, and just tightening down on expenditures. Some of the expenditures in major maintenance potentially pushed out into subsequent years. But in any event, the April forecast was 27.9 out in 12-13, and then it showed that we would gradually be coming out of that in fiscal year 2025. The other thing that I would add is that the good news is, again, last year we think we're going to do significantly better. Potentially we will not have had any draw on the operating reserve. The flip side of that is that with respect to the increase in the pension payments, I did dial in an increase, but not to the magnitude of what SD Serves is telling us, and we've got to do some adjustments because, as Con mentioned, we take their number and dial it back down because we have the hybrid plan. So we need to factor that into the cash flow forecast, and we're doing that right now. So, how do we plan to replenish the operating reserve? I will say, first of all, that this is a work in progress because we do need to update the cash flow. I think the financial results from last year were significant enough, and the factoring in the potential increase as far as the pension costs, we need to have a better picture in terms of what the future looks like. And frankly, in this environment, it's just a moving target in terms of what the future looks like. I think you all can appreciate that. But in any event, there are three sources of funds that would be available to replenish the operating reserve, the first of which would be the cash from operations. And as I said, we're in the process of updating our cash flow. I'm going to be in a lot better position once we've updated that cash flow for me to come back to you and then let you know, based on that cash flow forecast, when it looks like we could start taking cash from operations to start replenishing the operating reserve. Another source of funds would be the one-time payments, which, as we have seen in the past, it could come from legal settlements, it could come from insurance reimbursements, and at such time as we have those one-time payments, then it would be a policy decision of the board as to whether we wanted to use those monies for purposes of replenishing the reserve or for some other purpose. And the last source, potential source of funding for this would be out of a debt issuance. If you recall, what's really causing the big drawdown on the reserves, again, is repairs to the B Street Pier infrastructure to the tune of about $25 million. The original plan was that if everything was on track with Lane Field, we would issue debt against that revenue stream, we would use it for the NEDP, we would use it for the B Street Pier. That's been shoved off into the future, putting us in the position of needing to draw on reserves. So potentially, out in the future, when the hotel is built, once the revenues are coming off of that property, potentially we could then go out and bond against it and reimburse ourselves for the costs associated with the B Street Pier and also pay off the advance that we are anticipating we will get from CCDC to do the North Embarcadero. So that's as firm as it is at this point, and that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Well, I think we look forward to next month when you'll have more accurate figures, and then I think that'll tell us more at that point, unless there's something somebody wants to question today. Michael?
Jeff, by way of, we're going to be thinking about perhaps my question. It's this. Borrowing money, as I would understand it, borrowing money in the municipal market is a somewhat different and, in my experience, more cumbersome process than going down to a national or international bank, cutting your deal and walking out with a check. There's a whole host of differences in that whole process as a borrower. Would you agree with that, broadly speaking?
I guess it depends. I think it probably just depends on the bank that you're dealing with and how flexible they are in terms of the covenants.
But there's no, I don't think you have to go through Standard & Poor and Fitch and Moody. You don't have to have a roadshow. You don't have to have an offering period, selling group, and a whole bunch of different factors as opposed to going to a large, as I say, national or international bank that has money to loan and wants to loan money and saying, here's our projects, here's what we want to use it for. So I assume that option of closing some of these debt gaps is available to this board